gonna rip off her author. Would you rather? That's not even words, Kayla. I'm Kayla Amanda, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for being here. I feel super rusty doing this in this format. It's kind of been a minute and I'm in the middle of revisions, and at this point I don't have anything like cogent to tell you. I don't have any interesting insights to share with you, and I don't really know anything helpful to tell future Kayla. So for the time being, I'm gonna put like a pause on giving you any grand pronouncements about my weaknesses as a writer or my writing process in general, because I don't think that I could prematurely force that into anything that would be helpful for you or for me. Which means that today we are going to do a tag or tag adjacent video. This one I stole from Kate Cavanaugh. It is her writer Would You Rather. They're just a list of would you rathers, which she posted first on Instagram and then addressed in her YouTube video. I'm gonna handle it just like a regular tag and only give my opinion, but if you are looking for how people voted, Kate Cavanaugh goes into all of that on her video, and I think it's really interesting to look at. The first one is, would you rather write futuristic or historical? And while I maintain that I am not cut out to write sci-fi, I think futuristic is better for me than historical. I think especially if we include like near future sci-fi and like a near future apocalypse, that has a reasonable level of achievability for me. The technological advancement is not so much that I would be totally out of my depth. But the problem with historical is that while I think I could get away with being like kind of vague on the details for futuristic, if I'm kind of vague on the details for historical, people who really know that time period are gonna recognize all of my gaps in knowledge and all of the places where my research wasn't sufficient. Would you rather write an ending chapter or an opening chapter? An opening chapter is nice because like setting the stage is interesting, but I personally would go with an ending chapter. When I come up with book ideas, I tend to know where I'm going better than where I'm starting. So while an opening image is interesting, I usually have a clearer grasp on a closing image and how I sort of want that climax to come together. So I think an ending image is better for me, so an ending chapter. Would you rather write light and fluffy or dark and gritty? So this is kind of hard because I don't really write like comedies or rom-coms or like specifically fluffy stories. I also never wrote like fluffy fanfic. All of my books have like blood and violence in them. But I also don't love like a dark gritty reboot or like a grimdark world where everything is crapsuck. That's also not my style. I just like find those worlds hard to live in, and I don't want to dwell in that place like in my free time. So I think that I would be inclined to say light and fluffy. If by light and fluffy I can mean like sarcastic and snarky and a scrappy found family wins against all odds, even if it does involve broken ribs and a stab to the spleen. Which works with the next question, which is animal companion or found family. And this is not even a question for me, it is found family all the way. I think that animal companion tends to be a bit more YA, and I don't tend to write YA, so there's just not like a lot of animal companions in what I read or what I write, unless you count shapeshifters, which seems rude. Would you rather write horror or romance? And again, no question, I would rather write romance, despite the fact that I am a tired goth with like a skull and a mummified rat on her bookshelf. I don't actually like horror. I'm not very good at it. I get genuinely scared. My ex-girlfriend made me watch Saw with her, and by the end of the movie I was just like angrily crying and stressed out. I made her go to the bathroom with me because I was afraid that a pig face was going to be in the shower and they would get me while I was peeing. So I'm a coward, and horror really scares me, which means I don't think that I would write it very well because I don't enjoy it, and I don't think that you can write things you don't enjoy. The next one is, would you rather write a hard magic system or a soft magic system? And for me, it's soft magic all the way. While I really like it when other people write these complex, concrete, hard magic systems, that's just not how my brain works, and it would be really hard for me to hold all those details. That being said, I do think it's really important for your world to have internal consistency. So if you set a rule, that rule has to always be true, or there has to be a reason that you break it. I don't think you can just be like willy-nilly with your magic system. I do think that you need to remain internally consistent, but soft magic for sure. Would you rather write only standalones or only series? And again, this is a really easy question for me. I have never once in my entire life had an idea for a book that was only a standalone. All I have are series ideas, which is interesting. I read a lot of series, which I think is part of it. So I'm just always thinking in that way because that's the kind of content that I consume. But also I just like love big long series arcs, and that's what my brain produces, which is good if I get to write series, because it means I'm thinking big picture and I'm already in the habit of having those thoughts, but it can be really difficult because if I'm busy thinking about the series, I'm not actually thinking about the specific book. And while it's great to have an idea for book 3, you need to write and publish book 1 before you can get there. So definitely series, but also that's something that I need to learn to rein in and be a little bit more careful about. Would you rather write one project at a time or only be able to write multiple projects? This one's a little bit hard, which I didn't actually think it would be, but I think that it's one project at a time because I can find it difficult to jump between projects. So being forced to focus on one is less difficult for my process than being forced to jump between multiple projects. However, I'm doing this new thing right now where before work, I'm forcing myself to do my rewrites, which I find challenging. And then after work, I let myself play in the generative world of this like future project that I'm kind of working on. Right now, that system is working really well for me because before my capitalism job, first thing in the morning, I got some work done on my revisions. I make actual progress. I hit my at least 1 hour mark. And then I let myself step away from it and go back to playing in another more generative creative space. So I don't feel like I'm stuck doing one thing. I don't feel like I'm stuck only in edit hell, which I don't really enjoy, but is important for me to do. And I actually think that being generative in this other world and being generative with this other idea is helping my brain be more elastic and is actually helping me be more productive when I am revising, because my brain is staying in that creative space as opposed to doing something else once I'm burned out on revising for the day, which is like a very long way of saying I think one project at a time, but I'm finding juggling projects right now pretty helpful. Would you rather be an award winner or a bestseller? And I know that this is not true for everyone, but for me it is absolutely a bestseller. And part of that is like a pure capitalism issue. Award winners don't necessarily sell very well, but also like award winners don't actually have to be that popular. Award winners mean that critics really liked your book or that it fell into a very specific category, which is great. And there's nothing specifically wrong with being critically acclaimed. But what I write is like trashy romance or self-indulgent snarky Monster Hunter books. Those aren't necessarily going to get critical acclaim anyways, but I don't really write them for critical acclaim. I write them because they're id books. I write them because they make me so incandescently happy when I get to a particularly indulgent part and I'm lying in bed late at night and I just have to keep reading. And I think that when you're a bestseller, that's the kind of energy that's implied with that, the kind of energy which has people clamoring to read your book and buy it right away. And that's really what I want. The next question is, would you rather write fantasy or sci-fi? And I think it's a no-brainer that I would rather write fantasy. I don't have a brain to hold sci-fi. I find that technology level really difficult to wrap my head around, and I don't think that I would do it very well. Plus, I fucking love fantasy. Would you rather write character description or setting description? We have already discussed several times that I am not good at writing description. It's something that I really struggle with. So I would rather have to write setting description because I think that I'm actually better at writing a setting description than I am at writing a character description. I have a really hard time writing character description and not feeling weird about it, not feeling like I'm being cheesy and over the top. So what I would enjoy writing more, setting description. What I need to get better at and should probably practice doing, character description. The kind of books I write, that's more important, and I would like to be better at it. Would you rather write a first draft or a final draft? A final draft. Fuck. A final draft means I'm done revisions and I don't have to revise it anymore, so please God, a final draft. Also, I pretty much always have major changes about partway through my first draft, so first drafts are like kind of stressful for me anyway. Would you rather write literary fiction or genre/commercial fiction? And that's easy, commercial fiction. I obviously mostly read genre. I write romance and like snarky Monster Hunter books. But also, I just like never read literary fiction. I haven't really read literary fiction since, I guess, my English degree. It's not really my style. It doesn't have the pacing that I love. Actually, I stopped reading Ninth House not because it was like gross or crossed any lines or anything that I heard other people complaining about, but like I thought it had literary fiction pacing in a genre book, and I really wanted like this world but with genre pacing, and I didn't get that. So I just found myself putting it down one day and not feeling this like compelling drive to pick it up again the way that I do when I read like Ilona Andrews or Chloe Neal or Shauna Maguire, those books that I consume in about 8 hours. I just felt like the pacing was too slow for me, and that's kind of how I feel about all literary fiction, is it's just not paced the way I want. I want like a popcorn book, and literary fiction is like seared asparagus, which is so good for you and it tastes really good, but it's like not really what I'm looking for late at night. Sorry, my battery died and I had to like fix all of this, so apologies if the framing is not the same. The next question was, would you rather be forced to write love triangles or never be allowed to write romances again? And I obviously would rather be forced to write love triangles. As someone who writes explicitly romance novels or urban fantasy with strong romantic elements, not being allowed to write romance would kind of like fuck my whole shit up. Also, I firmly believe that there is no reason to have a love triangle when you can have a threesome, and that any love triangle can become a threesome if you believe in yourself. So the last question is, would you rather write a setting which has a constant sandstorm or a constant rainstorm? Maybe it's because I was born and raised in Vancouver. I grew up in a temperate rainforest. I'm pretty used to it raining most of the year, but rainstorm all the way, baby. I know how to handle a rainstorm, and there's something so moody and atmospheric about like the patter of rain on the window, about the sound of it on the roof, the low-hanging clouds, that whole vibe. Besides, people aren't like the Tin Man. This isn't a Wicked Witch of the West situation where we will melt or rust if we get damp. You can throw in a Gore-Tex and go about your day. Doc Martens are fairly water resistant. You can just kind of live your life as normal. But when I went to Burning Man and had to deal with sandstorms there, it was a nightmare. You could not see your hand in front of your face. You could hardly breathe. It was like really stressful to deal with. And while I think that would be like a really interesting setting to work with and deal with your characters having to handle that, I also just don't think I would enjoy being in that setting, and it's one of those things that I like don't want to dwell on writing because it would stress me out. I also think that it would be harder for your characters to work in, which means that I would need to do more work as an author to make their world functional and to work around the sandstorm, which again, I'm a little bit lazy and I don't want to do. So that is my Kate Cavanaugh's Would You Rather author edition. I will leave the questions down below so you can go ahead and do it yourself. I would obviously love to see what you have to say, even if you just want to leave that in a comment, we can chat about it down below. Any other questions, comments, concerns, complaints, whatever, you can leave that down there. Like, subscribe, do that good engagement shit. If you're looking for me anywhere else, I'm pretty much everywhere. It's Kayla Amanda. That is Kaylughmanda. And I'll see you next time.